Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the guest house. My name is Sohail, joined by Ahmed, the boss man, and Ismail, our calligrapher in training. How are you guys?
Alhamdulillah.
Well, the only one person's ever called me a boss man, and
Well,
that's between you and me.
yeah,
So
we'll keep it like that. We'll keep it
My
like that.
calligraphy teacher won't even call me calligrapher in training. That's how bad I am so far. So I'm still learning.
Maybe you should step up your calligrapher game then.
actually,
Uh,
he actually is pretty decent though. So if you want to look at his stuff, you should ask him.
all right.
I'll send
He
something
I
actually
over.
does have nice. He actually is doing pretty well.
okay, very
I'm
cool.
doing
I,
okay.
I expect it to be sent to me in email format so I can take a look at it.
I'll send it in the WhatsApp group.
All right, fine. If you want to do it like that, that's fine. How's everybody doing?
Alhamdulillah. How are you? It's been
No,
a
I'm
while.
good. I'm good. I have a little bit of a bone to pick with you.
Mm.
In our planning stages, we were like, oh, Ismail's coming in Ramadan. We're gonna get together and we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that and we're gonna beat Joe Rogan and all this. And then I see you at the masjid a little bit here and there. We have some discussions, and then there's just radio silence for like 3 weeks. And so we connect, and Ismail's like, oh, I'm sorry, I was suffering from jet lag. And I'm thinking to myself, the dude's been here for 3 weeks. How is he still suffering from jet lag? And then it finally clicked, he's back in Turkey. So yeah.
Well, I didn't want to disturb you because Ramadan and 4 kids and all
Four
this stuff.
four kids. Yeah.
It's a lot for you, so I didn't want to. No, in all seriousness, I got sick like halfway through, and I stayed sick pretty much until a day before I left. My voice
Oh
was out.
man.
Like for Eid, my voice was completely gone during Eid. I was barely able to talk to people and all this stuff. And then I was also like a bit feverish at one point.
Oh,
So
so they could
that put
barely
me
hear
out.
you when you were sick?
Yeah, basically.
There's
Yeah.
there's a lot of inside stuff going on today. We need to stop that.
Pre-recording Binter that happened.
Yeah. No, but all right, Michelle, you're good. You're back. When are you gonna be back here?
The plan,
Yeah.
hopefully, if
Yeah.
I pass my last class that I'm doing right now, I will be back by Eid al-Adha, which is I think
Okay.
June 7th. So
Okay.
I'm trying to
June?
come. Yeah, I'm trying to come by the end of May, basically, like come maybe a week before Eid, and then I'll be home for the summer.
Very good.
Yeah,
Hopefully we'll be able to connect at that point then.
yeah,
Hopefully, because that's 3 months.
yeah. I mean, we should be at least recording what, like
But
3 episodes by the time
he's
it
gonna be
comes in.
suffering from jet lag, so we're gonna have to give him some
Yeah,
time.
it's bad, man. It can last a while.
All right. So I think we're gonna get into some Ramadan reflections. Anybody want to start off and share something, and then we'll go from there, inshallah.
Yeah, sure. So alhamdulillah, this year was the first year for me to partake in Ramadan in a Muslim country. So it was definitely a unique experience. There's ups, pros and cons for having that experience. So it was interesting because again, I spend like part of my time on the university campus, which is like kind of removed from the urban center. And then I was going on the weekends, basically Thursday through Sunday, to like Uskudar, which is one of the central neighborhoods in Istanbul. So during that time, it was very nice. The Ramadan atmosphere, like seeing a Ramadan atmosphere outside of your home and your masjid for the first time in my life, at least in person, experiencing something that's just not relegated to just your home and your masjid is very nice. So you go out in the street, there's Ramadan lights everywhere. Everybody's partaking. There's traditional food and sweets that you can buy and it's being given out. The mosques were doing certain salawat and stuff on certain days out loud on the speakers. Tarawih experience was very interesting. So all that was very nice. And because it was my first year, there isn't like a huge network that I'm a part of. So there was a bit of this like I don't want to say loneliness because it wasn't lonely, but it was alone. Like you felt you were alone in
Like
a certain
a
part.
halwa type of situation.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Again, there are people that I know, like when I in Uskudar, there were people that I know that I met up with and stuff like that. And I did go to a couple of iftars, but it's definitely different than, for example, back home going to
Right.
MBIC and there's a whole programming and you know half the people at the masjid and you do dhikr afterwards, like all this stuff. You don't get that experience in the mosque per se, but it was
Yeah,
nice
Ahmed
because
Ismail definitely knows half the people at the masjid. So
He knows more than half the
yeah, yeah.
people.
So we're sitting there talking in the hallway, and everybody's walking by. Oh, Salam, you're back. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm like, then
it
leave the
wasn't
dude
that many
alone,
people.
man.
So that first half, like it was nice because like you said, Ahmed is a bit of a khalwa with, especially with like Tarawih and stuff. I went to a certain mosque in Uskudar most of the nights for Tarawih. It's a well-known mosque in Istanbul and specifically in Uskudar. It's called Aziz Mahmoud Hudai, and it's the burial site of an Ottoman era scholar named Aziz Mahmoud Hudai, and uh, he's from the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ, and he was the grand mufti of the Ottoman Empire during his time. And there's a lot of great things about him. So he's a huge figure in Üsküdar, and a lot of people visit the mosque and the tomb throughout the year. And a lot of people from Üsküdar constantly go there. So it's a very small mosque. It's on top of it's up a hill, and it's a bit isolated. Like in Ramadan at night, you go there. It's a very residential area, and it's relatively isolated from the hustle and bustle of like central Üsküdar, where a couple of the bigger mosques are. So I liked going up there to pray because it was very like you felt like you were praying in some degree of seclusion and away from like the chaos of Istanbul. So I'll go there in the evenings, and then because I was also studying because I had an exam mid Ramadan, I would come back down, and the coffee shops, obviously there's a whole street, well-known street in the area that's just filled with coffee shops, and they were just packed to the brim. But there was one that I found that was on one of the side streets that I'll go to study. So it was nice, and I would do that after Tarawih. So I would study for a couple of hours, and then I would go home and sleep. But it was really nice because I did during the daytime. Um, I would, because I would stay up at night, I would wake up around Dhuhr, right before Dhuhr, and then I would either find the masjid. There's a lot of, if you've been to most Muslim countries, it's like mosques on every corner. And in Istanbul, there's no exception to that. So I would find like a quieter mosque that nobody was sitting in or something, either read Quran or do some dhikr or prayer or anything like that. I did that a few times. So it's nice because you're kind of have the opportunity to like engage in some kind of isolated ibadah. So that I would say the upside of my first year in Turkey during Ramadan is it was beneficial for my individual ibadah, individual worship, to be able to focus, to be able to kind of really hone in on the spiritual aspect of Ramadan. But the communal aspect, I would say, is still for someone who's only doing that in the first year. Probably, there's people who I know who've been in Turkey for 10 years and so on. They have friends whose houses they go over and iftars and they go to Tarawih with their friends and all that. So at that point, you can develop that kind of community. But me being there for my first year, I didn't have that. So when I came back for the second half of Ramadan and MBIC with MBIC and stuff, that was something that I feel like I benefited more from MBIC, which is a communal aspect and doing group dhikr. Because in Turkey, there's a lot of certain places that will do dhikr, but it's very hard to come by. And this is something that um, several people have, that have pointed out that it's not that they're exclusive or anything, but like it's not widely advertised that like this mosque or this Sufi tekka is doing the or whatever. Some people just know, and then they might tell you if you ask them. But in Ramadan, it was a little bit harder because there was schedule changes. Some places weren't doing it in Ramadan, and so for me, come back to MBIC, and the last 10 nights, all 10 nights being dedicated for dhikr and hour-long dhikr and stuff, that was nice. So to do those communal activities, I felt like it was easier at MBIC as opposed to like being a first year in Ramadan in Istanbul. That was
Yeah, I get it. I'm
definitely a lot more challenging.
definitely jealous. It's quite the experience. I myself haven't experienced Ramadan in a Muslim country, so I'm sure it was really, really amazing. Inshallah, inshallah one day.
Sure.
You guys, this Ramadan, do you guys think that, as the kids say, it hit differently this time? Um, this time I think it just went by so fast. Am I the only one, or did you guys feel that as well?
No, I felt the same way.
Yeah, I think it's the fastest Ramadan that I've experienced, and it felt different as well. Um, my son had a science experiment that we went to go see for his school, and his experiment was the effects of fasting. And then obviously, other than the obvious results of losing weight and blood sugar levels and things like that, one of the things that they came up with was that there was much more clarity during this fasting. And I asked him, well, do you think it was just because of the lack of food, or was it because of the religiosity, or what? And there was three of them, and all three of them said because of religion as well. So I personally, from a personal standpoint, definitely felt that it was just so much more mental clarity. Shaitan's chained up, so there's no whisperings in your ear telling you to do this and do that, and not even telling you to do things, but just, in the sense of self-doubt and all just other nonsense that goes through your head. So this year specifically, I felt that one, it just went by so fast, and two, is just a clarity that I've not experienced in a while. And then, of course, as soon as Ramadan's done, then everything's back to normal.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that you talked about the. I noticed that as well in this Ramadan, where a lot of your habits, because a lot of times, like, obviously, when even if I'm not even talking about sins, just generally, when you don't want to be doing something that maybe you feel like is a waste of time or whatever the case might be, um, a lot of it you can kind of like say, well, that's maybe out of my control. But I feel like Ramadan gives you the opportunity to see what are habits and what is just like kind of what you're used to, and what's the easiest way, or what's the easy way out for a lot of the situations that you're in. I feel like Ramadan gives you the opportunity to clearly discern how best to kind of break those patterns. That, again, not even, I'm not talking about sins, just generally. Let's say, like, in the whatever. Oh, I finished work and I have like an hour before dinner. I'm gonna go play some PS5. That's not necessarily bad, but it is a bit of a waste of time, especially when you could be reading Quran, especially in Ramadan. You could be reading Quran, you could be reading generally, you could just be like doing anything else, right? And like you're just like, well, it's just an hour, but that hour is a lot. That's like a big chunk of time. So I think like those that hit me. That was also a reflection I had as well. Was it gave you the opportunity um to figure out the areas that you can improve in just your day to day after Ramadan as well.
Yeah, not only that, I think like you said, kind of touching off of what you said, in normal times, everybody's always complaining and stressed out about, there's just not enough time in the day to do this and do that. And then when you're in Ramadan, you realize how much of the stuff that you do is just complete nonsense, and it's a waste of time, and gives you the opportunity to, inshallah, at least, to, outside of Ramadan, rethink maybe your habits and the way you go about doing things and things like that. So hopefully this Ramadan is the impetus to, make some change that lasts, and until next Ramadan at least, and then you're able to even add on to that and go from there.
Part of the point about clarity, and I've heard scholars talk about this, is the idea of, in the outside of Ramadan, you're constantly feeding into your lower nafs, right? Which is, whether it's through food, through other desires, through overconsumption, all kinds of whatever you can think of, whether it's, like you said, watching TV, playing video games, overeating, all this kind of stuff. That you're constantly getting your body accustomed to feeding the lower nafs. And so when you remove your body's dependency on uh, these kinds of desires, all of a sudden you're now giving it the space, theoretically speaking, to be focused on what's actually important and to having clarity. And that's why you'll see that especially when it comes to food. A lot of scholars will tell you one of the biggest problems to progress for an individual is overeating. And then the people say, well, how's that tied to like how intelligent I am or how spiritual I am or any of this stuff? And it's because obviously food has a lot of impact on the body, not just on the physical, but mental and all this, and all these other aspects. And so when you train your body to not overconsume, and whatever it does consume is actually healthy and natural, you are putting yourself in a position where your body can function better and you have better mental clarity. And in turn, you eventually have better spiritual clarity. And so that's what Ramadan does. And it removes these kind of desires and dependencies and allows you to actually focus. So this is something, you know, when speaking of your son's science project, that's something that's like that is a byproduct of that. And so outside of Ramadan, the idea of Ramadan is that once you leave Ramadan, yes, you're allowed to eat again, but the idea is that you control and you limit how you eat, what you eat, you know, your physical activity, all this kind of stuff, so that when Ramadan comes around next year, you're not starting from the same point as you did the year before. And so you'll see that many people of higher status spiritually, they're not overweight. They're very sharp. You know, like you'll see even people who are older that don't look like they're older, and that's because they're constantly taking care of themselves. Spirituality keeps you young, and you know, eating good food and not overeating keeps you young, and it keeps you sharp and gives you clarity of mind.
Yeah, for sure. We need to remove red dye 40 from our diet and all the other nonsense that we consume. Um,
Was that an RFK Jr. support? Was that
uh,
Yeah,
you
official
know, I
endorsement.
mean, I don't know if you want to get into that. I to be honest with you, I have been thinking about that. You know, a lot of the stuff that the dude says is really not that far off. I'm not going to say I agree with 100% of whatever he says, but you know, there is some truth to some of the stuff that he's spewing. I will say that.
yeah.
But yeah, going back to what Ismail said just now, touching off on the last point was that to take that whatever you learned and you've done and the habits that you've created outside of Ramadan, you know it's a way to change, right? So hopefully we're able to make the change for the better and then continue on until next Ramadan and make even bigger and better changes as well, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yeah, this is kind of, I don't know if this is I don't know if this is true or not, but something that I reflected on this Ramadan also was something that we were kind of touching upon, but not necessarily naming is, and it's like all about the process of getting to where you eventually want to be, right? So like you take steps today to get to where you eventually want to be. And I kind of look at for a very long time I kind of wondered what I don't want to say the point of, but like what the purpose of us knowing about certain aspects of the unseen is. Like what was the purpose of us knowing about angels
Mhm.
specifically? Like realistically, everything that happens, we know Allah can do with no help, with no regard to anything else. Like you don't need to know about the process of how things are done, right? We don't really need to know that Allah had Angel Jibreel come to the Prophet ﷺ and reveal verses to him. We don't need to know about the stories of the prophets and the angels of and the angel Jibreel going to them and speaking to them. We don't need to really know about all of these. We don't need to know about the trumpet being blown for the day of judgment to start. We don't need to know about the angels guarding the gates of heaven, the angels guarding the hell. We don't need to know all of that stuff. So why do we know that stuff? And again, this is my limited perspective. This is my limited understanding. A lot of it, I think, comes from understanding that things have a process, right? And I feel like a lot of that kind of endows us with the opportunity to understand that not everything just happens the way it is, right? Allah can allow things to happen with no process, which which again that's his right, but he allows us to understand that even with the unseen, even with the things that don't need to have a process, or at least in our limited views don't need to have a process or may not have a process, do have processes. And again, I
I
think
mean, similarly too, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that he created heavens and the earth in 6 days.
exactly, that's a great
Right.
point. Yeah, so like even that, and he didn't need 6 days.
Mhm.
He gave us a process, or he gave us to understand that there even that has a process, because the process matters. Why does it matter? We may not know why it matters today, but we know that we can't be who we want to be without that process. So I think like that was a reflection I had this Ramadan as well, where it's really that process and the journey of getting to where you want to be is maybe just as important as where you end up. Because of course we also know that the process and the journey is all through the will of Allah to begin with. But so even even that we could like wake up one day and go to sleep and that's our entire life. And Allah tells us, okay, this is what happened in your life. That could also be our life, but that's not what happened, right? Like you are born, you go through your life, through the stages of life, you go through your education process, you go through your learning processes. You become a father, you become a husband, you become all these things. Hopefully, a husband first and then a father, but then you can become all these things, and and then you get to the end stage of your life where you pass, and now you enter the barzakh, and you begin to enter that process, right? And then it's all towards the process, right? It's all towards the journey of eventually meeting Allah, and determining your scales in an appropriate manner. So it's like I don't know. To me, I thought that was a really uh, again, I don't know if that's the reason for
Yeah.
all these things, but that's kind of something I took from it.
I mean, this is very true too, because like I've I've this is something I've done to myself, but also I've heard a lot of people approach Ramadan this way, which is like, for example, just to give what two quick examples, like praying all 20 rakats in Taraweeh every single night, or at least something close to that, or trying to finish reading the entire Quran cover to cover. I mean, if the idea is that progress, it's not also that there's a process, but that it's also a gradual buildup. And so a lot of people put themselves in a position where they feel guilty if they can't finish the Quran cover to cover in Ramadan. But then if you ask most of them, they might have not touched the Quran at all or very little the entire rest of the year. So you all of a sudden you're going to come in and be able to finish the entirety of the Quran in 1 month. I mean, and you're fasting and you're tired and lethargic and all this stuff. It's not a practical objective. What Ramadan is about is adding something that you are already doing and adding it gradually.
Yeah.
So if, for example, one Ramadan, you should start something gradual, like reading a quarter of a juz, so 5 pages every day, instead of trying to read 20 pages a day, because the average juz is about 20 pages. So 5 pages. And then the next Ramadan, you add a couple more pages and you do 7, and then you do 10, and then you do, so the whole point is you're doing something you weren't previously doing. And this is one of the things that I heard a scholar advise once a long time ago, is saying that every Ramadan you should pick up a habit, a positive habit that you weren't previously doing, and carry that all the way until next Ramadan, and then add a new one on top, and then carry that all the way until next Ramadan, and so on. And this is why when the Sahaba and the Prophet they would say like they prepped for Ramadan a whole month or 2 months or 3 months in advance, because it is something that requires preparation. I mean, again, alhamdulillah, most Muslims can jump right into fasting and will fast. And even if they struggle, they'll still fast all 30 days and go to Taraweeh and all this stuff. But the idea is that there is supposed to be preparation. The Prophet ﷺ fasted, and a lot of Sahaba fasted in the lead up to Ramadan. They prayed extra salawat, throughout and certain nights in the lead up to Ramadan. And so there's a very well-known hadith that different hadith that talk about how the Sahaba prepped for Ramadan and how they would be looking forward to Ramadan months in advance. And so same with Taraweeh, like there's no like fard to pray Taraweeh all 20 rak'ahs every single night. You pray what you can, and as long as it's more than what you were praying before, then that's it. And the problem is we've put such an onus on, for example, praying Taraweeh, that people might even miss Fajr and miss the Fara'id, an expense for, they'll do that and then not, so that they could pray Taraweeh, and they'll stay up for dhikr all night and then oversleep and miss Fajr. You're missing the point, right? So I think that's something that's really important.
I would even add to that, Ismail. I think the other thing is that those recommendations tend to be for people who are starting out, right? It's like a roadmap to be like, hey, do this and this Ramadan, then wait till the next, continue doing it throughout the year, then do something else for the next one. To be honest, and not to use a gym term, but like that's kind of sandbagging. To be honest, like you can do way more throughout the year. Like you can do something during Ramadan, add that to your repertoire, then add something else 6 months later, right? So
Yeah,
you have two
exactly.
things, and by the next Ramadan, now you add three things, then
Mhm.
you add four things. And then once you start doing more, you want to add more, and I think that's like
And
the big
naturally,
thing.
that's going to happen anyway. So
Exactly.
the point is you're going to advise people to do one thing
Yeah,
because you want it to be realistic and achievable in their mind.
exactly.
Naturally, what it's going to end up happening is once you reach a certain point of consistency, every time you do something, you're going to add things faster and sooner. So maybe
100.
the first year you just do the one habit until next Ramadan. And then,
Yeah,
like you said, the next year, you at 6 months, you actually just start a new habit. And
yeah.
so there's like there's a Qadri tariqa, like a Sufi order. One of the requirements that they have, if you, for a certain, I don't know what you want to call it, induction
Status.
into the order, right? For a certain status,
Yeah,
one of the things that they require, and I think Imam Zaid talked about this because he's a member of it, um, was that you have to pray every single prayer on time, not within the time frame, on time, at the time that it comes in for 40 days straight, and not get angry or lose your temper for 40 consecutive days. And the logic behind that, and that's how you get, that's your entry into a certain point of that tariqah, right? So the point of and the wisdom of that is that it takes 40 days to build the habit. And so if you do anything like this very consistently and very rigidly for 40 days, let alone 6 months or even a year, you'll continue, but most likely you'll continue that habit. And
yeah,
so that's kind of the point of Ramadan, is that it's 30 days. So not quite 40 days, but it's 30 days. So either you could start that habit 10 days before. Let's just say you wanted to use the 40-day rule. You would start that habit either 10 days before or continue it 10 days after. And you would eventually develop it into a habit. And by the way, I'm saying this as someone who struggles to implement this properly. So
oh,
like
of
this
course,
is something
definitely.
that like even this Ramadan, especially with being in two countries, it was definitely threw me off a little bit. Like the consistency wasn't there. So this is something that I definitely want to implement at a much better level. And specifically the idea of prepping for Ramadan in advance. Like being especially at least 1 month, maybe not 2 months, but getting ready for Ramadan before Ramadan even comes in. Especially people fast, like for example, the middle of Shaban. That's like a good way to start if you aren't doing something like that already. So things like that can help you get into the groove. And especially with fasting all these like different Sunnah days, the day of Arafah, middle of Shaban, day of Ashura, like these things will help you build some kind of, and obviously there's a Monday and Thursday fast, there's all this stuff. So it's obviously in some ways easier said than done, but in other ways it's not. If you start very small, and I can't remember the hadith, but there's a hadith about doing a habit and sticking to it no matter how small it is
Yeah,
in terms of like
Yeah,
spirit, like a religious thing.
I think you guys really said it very eloquently, and I hope our listeners really took something away from that because I personally did. Um, I don't want to say that I disagree with what Ahmed's saying in terms of sandbagging and things like that, but I think we everybody's going to do whatever they're able to do, right? Whether it's something little or something big, right? There's a hadith that says that Allah loves those that do a little bit, but consistently, as opposed to
That's
a
the hadith I
lot
was
at
talking about.
once, right?
Yes.
So it's the same thing as like if you want to extrapolate it into like American philosophy. I listen to a lot of these speakers and stuff like that, and one of them mentioned something. It was geared towards college students, where you're going through an entire semester and you're a week before finals, and now all of a sudden you're gonna sit there and pull an all-nighter. It's like, what? Like you've not studied an hour a day, and now all of a sudden you're gonna sit there and spend an all night, and meanwhile your body's gonna be like, are you serious? Like this is what we're gonna do now? So it's a matter of consistency, right? So from a personal standpoint, I again, I don't know why it's this Ramadan that I felt it was different than all the others, or maybe it's just because we're so close to being outside of Ramadan that it's in my mind. but I will.
It's because I wasn't around, so also you missed me, and it was,
Well,
Yeah.
that definitely made a big
yeah,
difference for
yeah,
sure.
for sure.
Uh,
I imagine it got better in the second half when I showed
oh
up.
wait, that first night I saw you in the NBIC hallway. It's it's like everything
His
made
face lit
sense.
up.
Yeah.
He's like, now Ramadan has started.
Yeah. Now that it's half done, now it's starting. But yeah, from a personal standpoint, I really, and again, I'm miserably failing at this, but I'm really trying to kind of continue on whatever little habits that I kind of started during Ramadan. Hopefully, I can continue that into next Ramadan. But while we were talking, I just want to hit on one other thing that Ahmed said in our last podcast, right at the beginning of Ramadan, about us having suhoor and why, and it helped you pray tahajjud. It's like subhanallah the way it worked. I'm not gonna say every night. There was definitely a few nights that randomly I just woke up at a certain time for no reason, no alarm clock, no nothing, and I was like, you know what? It's a sign. So I got up, prayed tahajjud, and went and ate something, and it's just subhanallah the way Allah wills things to happen. They happen. And I'm one of those guys who hear people say, "Oh, I wake up at 6 o'clock every day. I don't need an alarm clock or anything." And in my head, I'm thinking, like, what? Like, how is that even possible? But you know what? It happened, and inshallah, it continues. I hope to continue that, inshallah, as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think once you start doing that more, you already have a lot of nur in your face, but you'll even get more nur.
That's the four kids newer that you're referring to, right? Yeah.
But but even like something that I just thought of as well was around the Sahaba, and a lot of them were not hafad. A lot of them would go through the Quran in like 10 ayahs at a time and
Right.
implement the ayahs uh, as earnestly as they could until they moved on to the next 10.
Yeah, I think it wasn't even 10. I think if it's the same one that I'm thinking, it's just they would recite or practice one ayah, and then once they're able, whether it's one or 10, they
Yeah,
would
whatever.
implement those first, and then they would go on to the next. Yeah.
Exactly. Which tells you a lot about it tells you a lot of things, first off, but it tells you a lot about maybe uh the weight of each ayah and maybe how much we're not giving each their due weight.
Right.
But yeah, that's a topic for another day, I think.
Well, there's another interesting thing about Ramadan that I think Dr. Shadi had mentioned some years ago. And he was saying that in Ramadan, people tend to focus, or they not focus, but a lot of people tend to start certain fiqh classes or take certain classes, Islamic studies classes, and because they think that that's like the thing to do in Ramadan, right? And so he's saying like that's not the thing to do in Ramadan. He's like Ramadan is a time for ibadah, spiritual development. He said you take all your classes outside of Ramadan. When it comes for Ramadan, that's the time to focus on strictly ibadah and spiritual development. You're not, of course, you can learn certain things in Ramadan, and if you're an actual full-time student of Islamic knowledge, you probably still have classes in Ramadan and stuff. But the point is that if you're for the average person, that is actually the time where you sideline your courses, because even though there is obviously a spiritual benefit to it, the greater benefit of Ramadan, and that's been mentioned in Hadith and the Quran, is ibadah. So, um, one of the, a relative of mine, she was saying that she was listening to the Quran every day with like the audio translation because she wanted to try to understand. And I would say she was saying like I'm kind of complaining it takes like 2 hours to go through a juz, basically, something like that. And I was telling her, I said, just read the Quran. It's not like one of the beauties of the Quran that is that it has that no other book ever has is that you can develop spiritually by reading the Quran even if you don't understand it. And this is a misconception that a lot of people have. They think that you have to be able to understand the Quran in order to benefit from it. People who read the Quran on a regular basis, even if they don't understand it, have spiritual growth and create and have a better and a greater connection to Allah and to the Quran itself, and a greater love for the Quran as well. This is something that a blessing and a barakah that Allah gives by virtue of just reading His book. even if you don't understand it. And so in Ramadan, whether you're listening to it or reading to it, I wouldn't, it seems a bit counterproductive to focus on also the translation. A lot of people do that in Taraweeh too. They'll hold up like either a tablet or their phone or something to read the translation to follow along. Just focus on the actual prayer and just try to get that kind of khushua, right, from the salah, rather than trying to understand the content of what's being recited. I would one of the things that I would say, and again, maybe I'm saying this as somebody who's an Arabic speaker and can understand a lot of it, and perhaps it's not the same, but and I understand people feel maybe who don't speak Arabic might feel like they're missing out and they want to understand. But my recommendation would be, instead of doing it during prayer, if you have time during the day, read the translation during the day of what's going to be recited that night. And then go to the masjid that night and just focus on the prayer. Right. But to try to put so much effort into understanding, Allah's giving you the barakah and the blessing of a book that gives you spiritual growth, whether you understand it or not. Of course, we should all strive to understand, but there are people who go their whole lives, who read the Quran their entire lives, don't understand it, and have a very strong connection to the Quran. So, I think that's something that
but to your point, Ismail, I think the other point of that also is that, okay, you read the translation, and now like you're gonna bring out the book of tafsir to read the tafsir and to understand.
That's the other reason. But I didn't want to even open.
The words, right? It's understanding.
Yeah, but that's like opening a whole other
me
can of worms, right? Because like you can read the translation and understand it your own way, but that's not actually what the
Exactly.
what the verses mean.
Exactly.
So that's another reason why I say just focus on reading.
And then you start thinking, oh, well, it says this. During any prayer, you're thinking about what it's saying.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm glad you bring that up, because okay, so let me jump in as the non-Arabic speaker here. Okay. So again, I wish that I was consistent with this throughout Ramadan. I did try, and I hope to continue outside Ramadan. But specifically to what you just said, Ismail, I did actually start reading the translation as well, right? So from a non-Arabic speaker, 100% you're gonna take away from it something that I'm not able to, right? So of course, maybe you're not the Arabic in the Quran is different than
You would read it during the day or like follow it during prayer.
No, so okay, so I'll tell you the breakdown.
Okay.
For obviously the spoken Arabic is different than the Arabic in Quran, obviously.
Right.
Having said that, you're still gonna understand more than what I'm gonna be able to understand. So what I did this Ramadan was I made it a point to, in the evening time, read certain amount of pages and then read the translation as well. I didn't go into, okay, well, let me figure out the tafsir, because that's going a little bit overboard, and it wasn't the time to do that. So I did make a conscious effort, whether it's 2 pages, 3 pages, 5 pages, or whatever the case may be, I would read it in Arabic, and then those same ayahs I would read in English. I got further than I had gotten before, and I will say that it brings nuance to the surahs and ayahs that you've already listened to and heard so many times, and now you reflect back on, okay, well, this is what was meant, or this was a story with this, and it just kind of connects things, right? So during the Taraweeh, I'm not necessarily going over, oh, okay, this is what happened, or this is what I learned. It's just, it brings a different feeling to now hearing the ayahs that you normally hear every time. So
Right.
yeah, maybe you don't start a tafsir program yourself in Ramadan, but I think it does make a difference for at least the non-Arabic speakers to have that extra connection. I agree with you in the sense that even if you don't know the translation, there's a certain spirituality that it brings, but I think it raises it a level once you do understand at least a little bit of what you're reading.
Yeah, I agree. I guess my point too is also that it, like the ibadah itself is what you really want to. And again, not to disagree, I'm not disagreeing with your point, but I'm getting the gist of what I'm trying to say is that the people, I guess, get too caught up in the understanding and the learning during Ramadan rather
Yeah, I
than
get it. It's
the
not
building
a
up
time to now begin your coursework on that. It's
exactly.
it's Ramadan's for a time of internal reflection and things like that.
Because
But if you can add a little bit, then I don't think
because
there's any harm in
the
that.
idea is that if you go in with the right intention in your salah, in your dhikr, in your Quran reading, and all that, Allah will bring you closer to Him. This is Allah's, He can bring you as close to Him however way He wants. So
Right.
simply by not understanding something, Allah's not going to punish you because you weren't born with a native Arabic tongue. And a lot of people who are born speaking Arabic also have very hard times on understanding the Quran. This is not
Right.
like just a non-Arabic speaking thing. So Allah will bring you closer to Him if you, make an effort, right? Allah says that you take one step towards me, I will run to you. So it's, if you're looking for that kind of benefit, Allah will provide you with that benefit if you have the right intention, even if you don't understand. This is the beauty of Islam and the beauty of our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger, is that, that we can connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even if there's a difference in language. Allah understands us in however we express ourselves. And so this is something that Allah has given us, especially in Ramadan. He has provided us with so many ways to draw closer to Him that is practical for everybody, not just for Arabic speakers.
Yeah, I don't
And
know,
that's,
man. In college, I had a lot of Arabic friends, and we always used to joke, "You guys are Arab, you're going straight to heaven." So you guys
Yeah,
have a little bit of an advantage.
that's given too many of us a complex. That has actually, I think that's part of the deep strategy of Desis is tell the Arabs that they're so great that they stop trying, and then we can get ahead.
It's a conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
No, listen, I agree with all you guys are saying. Obviously, I had my own takes, which I shared, but at the end of the day, Ramadan is a time for internal reflection and spirituality and getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You try your best, and that's all that can be done. Inshallah, as you take one step towards Allah, Allah runs towards you, like you said. And I think the gist is to kind of keep the tradition, keep the intentions that you had in Ramadan outside Ramadan. Inshallah, by next Ramadan, it'll be even better.
Absolutely.
And any other things that Ahmed, you want to add? Anything else, or?
no, I think this was a good discussion. I know we had a couple other things we want to talk about, but I think this was a good way to re-enter the podcast sphere.
Yeah, I will say it was nice seeing you guys at NBIC Dhikr and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think going back to when we started, each masjid has its own vibe, own character, and subhanallah, the way NBIC feels, especially during Ramadan, it's like no other for us. So, and it's you see people that you haven't seen in a while, and you're able to connect and things like that. It was nice. It was definitely nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the in our area seems to be, I don't want to say it's becoming like a city of Ramadan and masajid and all that, but you start to feel that, like, when you go out and you go to the masajid and then you see, like, I feel like now a lot of the masajid are more connected with each other than they used to be. It used to be that, like, every masjid just does its own thing.
Right.
But I've noticed over the years with MBIC and CGP, ICJ, a couple other masajid, there's now this connection. And it was really, Ahmed, you were there, I think, and one of the nights where we saw Dr. Shadi, Imam Safwan, Sheikh Bowers, and well, there was one other person there. It was four scholars. Yeah, it was Ahmed, probably. Four scholars sitting together in the masjid. This was after Tarawih, between Tarawih and Dhikr.
Imam Zaid was there. Imam Zaid.
That was, but he wasn't sitting there at the time. That's right. He came that night during Dhikr, but it was before the Dhikr had started. They were sitting together in a circle, and there was a few other people sitting with them. And it was just very nice to see, like, this, like, group of scholars sitting together, sharing the same gathering, and just seeing them all in one place. And arguably some of the better scholars in our area, all together in one place, in a beautiful setting, at a beautiful time of the year, and a beautiful night, all this stuff. It was very nice to see. And, it kind of, again, you, as someone who's going to study history and has read a lot about historical settings in the Muslim world, this idea of scholars gathering under the roof of a masjid and, benefiting those around them in various different ways. This kind of brought back that kind of traditional feel to the masjid, because it's rare that we just see scholars just sitting, in a group of them, sitting with us in a circle after Tarawih, just, talking with us and sharing their barakah to the group, and then right after we do dhikr, and then Imam Zaid showed up as well, and he spoke after the dhikr as well. It was uh, the closest thing that we could have in New Jersey right now to what the great historical masajid of the Muslim world have been doing for hundreds and thousands of years. To have this collection of scholars in a place in one of the most, and Allah knows how many angels were present at that time. But it was a very beautiful sight to see, and it was nice to see.
I think you're hitting on something, Ismail, that I think we've been yearning for, which is like in the West, we're kind of removed from a lot that happens in traditional Muslim countries, and it kind of reignited the fact that Islam is not dead and it's not a dying religion. It's in fact a growing one, and a strong one. So inshallah, we'll begin to see.
It's a growing one. It's a strong one. It's also one that has it's a continuous one. This is, remember, most of these scholars that we know continue a tradition from a sanad, from a chain that goes back to the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is to see the sanad of from the time of the Prophet ﷺ all the way till today. I mean, is incredible. And these are people who, mashallah, have studied all over. You have Sheikh Ismail, who's studied at Qayrawan, and he's at Oxford, and you have Dr. Sharif, who's studied in Mauritania and in Egypt and in London, and so on and so forth. So Imam Zaid, who studied in Syria. I mean, these are people who are bringing the oldest of traditions right to our doorstep in New Jersey, which is an incredible thing to see.
Yeah, may Allah protect them and give us the benefit, continuous benefit of learning from them and being with them. I think we're competing with Texas as well. I think everybody's like, oh, I'm gonna go to Texas. They have, Sheikh this, Sheikh that.
No, there's no competition. We got the best case scenario.
I think we're holding our own as well.
Yeah.
But just to kind of hit on what Ahmed just said about the circle of the shayukh that were there. There's I don't know if this is the time or place to discuss this, but the topic of dhikr, group dhikr, and things like that.
We're gonna start a war right now.
Yeah.
Let's do it. But this is great for viewership. Let's see how
for certain viewers. For other viewers are like, what are you talking about? Who cares? But no, I'm not necessarily getting into the debate of whether it's permissible or not. I just wanted to make a point about wherever you stand on your thought process about group dhikr and things like that, specifically that night that you guys are talking about, and what Ahmed just said about you don't know how many angels are there. Whether you're for it or against it, if you're in the surrounding where Allah's name is being remembered, no matter how you look at it, there can't be any harm to that, right?
Right.
I was there with a friend of mine, and he's not necessarily into doing the group dhikr. But he was there at dhikr night, right? So I asked him, like, well, what's going on if you don't really believe in it? And his response was like, if I'm in the vicinity, the barakah is gonna overflow onto me, right? Whether I participate in it or not, I'm there, which is a good point. I think Sheikh Shadi had mentioned that one of the
he did
as well.
Yeah.
That I think Ismail, you can hit on it a little bit clearer. But if you're there in that presence, there's no harm that's gonna come to you, right?
Right.
There's a hadith about that.
So I don't know. I can't remember what Dr. Shadi cited. It might have been a hadith, but he basically said like the one thing that you do or technically not do and still get reward for it is the gathering of dhikr. So he's because with everything else you have to actually do it to get the reward. You have to fast to get the being around somebody who's fasting. You don't get the reward of that person for fasting. Being in a masjid while other people are praying, you don't get the reward. But when it comes to dhikr, just being in the mosque when dhikr is being recited, even if you're not partaking in it, and Dr. Shadi even said, even going as far as to say, even if you don't want to be there, just by virtue of being in the mosque, the malaika spread their barakah, and Allah spreads his reward upon everybody who's hearing the dhikr at that time. And so, like that, your friend, I don't know if he had heard that from Dr. Shadi or if that's just something he kind of intuitively thought of his own, but definitely, like, even if he's not necessarily comfortable participating, just by the fact that he's sitting in the masjid,
right,
he would get barakah and reward from that. So, which is very interesting. And he's saying that dhikr is the only thing that you can get that kind of reward from.
I think specifically to what he said was there was 3 types of people, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong. one who understand one when there is group dhikr going on, make a concerted effort to leave. Second person who may not be comfortable with it, but he doesn't leave, but he's guilty, he feels guilty, so he stays. And then the other person is who stays intentionally, right? So the second
Yes.
two people get the same benefit because they're there. Well, not necessarily the same benefit, but they get a benefit because they're there,
Right.
whereas the first person gets no benefit whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you were gonna say something about that?
Don't remember.
All right.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I thought I'd cut you off, so I wanted to make sure that you remembered your
No,
point.
no, it's okay.
But
Thank
in terms of just being there as well, it reminds me of when I was growing up. The masjid that I went to, they didn't partake in that, but there was always kids there and kind of running around, making noise and causing chaos. And I used to think, I'm like, what's the point? Why are you guys bringing your kids if they're not gonna sit there and pay attention? But subhanAllah, when you have your own kids and you're in that setting, then you understand. So from a personal perspective, there were many nights where I'm coming back from work, I'm exhausted, and the kids are like, no, we need to go to Tarawih, we need to go to the Dhikr. And I'm like, listen, it's not fard, we don't have to go every single night, it's all right. And they would get upset and we would end up going. But just I think the fact that the kids are there, like Ismail said, to kind of get the benefit of what's going on, they're not going to get that experience outside of that. And a true story. So my youngest Khalid, we were driving somewhere right after Ramadan, and out of the blue he said, I'm kind of sad, I'm depressed that Ramadan is done. And I'm like, why? What do you mean? Like, what's wrong? And he's like, it was so fun to go to the Dicker nights and things like that, and my friends were there, and it was just such a nice feeling. Mind you, he's like 9 years old, and he's saying this. And I told him, well, NBIC has Dhikr outside of Ramadan as well. We can go to the Friday night Dhikrs. He's like, no, it's not the same. It feels different. So, subhanAllah, even the kids realize the time
Yeah.
period that we're in and then the people that we have around us. So it's truly is a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. And just from personal experience, like the fact that I went to Tarawih, or I should say Tarawih, to the masjid while Tarawih was being prayed as a kid. And even though I didn't necessarily partake, and well into my to certain years of adulthood too, where a lot of times I might go to Tarawih and pray just a little bit, or and then go hang out with my friends. But the fact that I did that every Ramadan for most of my life is the reason why I'm able to come to Tarawih now and actually pray Tarawih and partake in dhikr and do all this stuff, because
Right.
I've automatically associated that, like, if it's nighttime in Ramadan, this is where I should be.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think, like in your case, just bringing your kids, even if they don't necessarily participate, as long as they're not doing something wrong, obviously, but they're just in the masjid and they're just, even if they're just talking with other shabab and stuff, and hanging out, as they get older, they'll wisen up and understand, and realize that they should be doing more and more, and little by little they'll actually do what they're supposed to be doing in the masjid. But if they never come to the masjid in Ramadan, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, you're an adult now, you got to start showing up, there's
Right.
no way they're going to get into that habit. And
Yeah,
I've
it goes back to
seen that.
the process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I've seen that firsthand, like experience with like me, and then other people that I know who've told me they have a hard time just coming to Tarawih. They can't bring themselves to come to it because they didn't grow up doing that.
Right.
So so they don't have that same nostalgic and positive association with Ramadan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, people don't need to go to the masjid to pray Tawweeh. Like they can pray
Right.
at home. But to your points,
You need the
in
encouragement,
order to build the habit, you kind of have to see it,
and you need the communal
especially
encouragement.
especially where we live. Yeah,
It takes a lot. If you think it takes a lot of discipline to pray tarawih in the masjid on a regular basis, it takes a lot more discipline.
yeah,
In my view, some people might find it easier, but I think it takes a lot more discipline to be able to consistently pray tarawih by yourself at home.
yeah,
Which, by the way, a couple of madhab will say that that's the recommended approach. Actually, is to pray at home. It's better than praying in the masjid,
yeah,
because you have more focus and less distraction. But the reason why Tarawih has a big deal in the masjid is because it brings the community together. It encourages people to do something they might not otherwise do. Once you reach a certain state in your life that you are that maybe some people might reach, and there are many shuyukh who are like this, who actually find the masjid to be a distraction and prefer to pray at home. And so you'll see there are certain shuyukh who might not go to the masjid in Ramadan for Tarawih because they are actually praying at home. But you are at a different level. But for most of us, like the mosque is actually works as an encouragement for us. We don't have that kind of discipline and strength to basically no, I can pray at home and pray as many rak'ahs and focus and be consistent. This requires a whole other level of spiritual strength and discipline. Discipline's very important. People think tasawwuf is all about how you feel spiritually. Discipline's a huge part of tasawwuf, and you can't reach certain levels of tasawwuf without discipline. This is why we were talking. One of the things we were talking about earlier about building a habit. Right? People just think that Ramadan is in and it's the time of spirituality, and now I'm gonna read the whole Quran in 1 month, or I'm gonna pray 20 hours of Tarawih. No, because if you didn't develop that discipline throughout the year, it won't matter. And even if you do manage to do a lot in Ramadan, you'll be burnt out by the end of it. And you'll be like, okay, I'm just gonna take a break for a few days, and then a few days becomes a month, and a month becomes 6 months, and then you're back to square one in Ramadan. So that's why discipline is important, and developing small habits at a time is the way to develop over the course of your life.
Yeah, subhanAllah, like Islam, like we mentioned it before, it's just a holistic answer to everything, right? You don't need all these self-help people and gurus out there. Like just sit down and study the tafsir, study the hadith, the Quran, and it's just you'll get all the answers that you're looking for.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then just to kind of recap, Allah is the best of planner. We make our plans, and Allah is the best of planners. So, at the end of the day, we just need to try our best, continue on what we started in Ramadan, inshallah, to next Ramadan. It's again, like I said before, it's not how Ramadan treats you, but how you treat Ramadan. So, inshallah, you get something from this Ramadan, and you continue on the habits that you formed until next Ramadan, and inshallah, we can add to that. With that, we thank you for joining us again on this episode. If you can follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, and Blue Sky, we'd really appreciate it. Please do like and subscribe. Please enter in some comments that if anything resonated with you, or if you have any of your own thoughts or ideas that you want us to hit upon next time, inshallah. With that, we thank you for joining us. Assalamu alaikum.